2:47 a.m. Altiplano Prison, Mexico. The concrete fortress that held El Chapo. Cell Block 7, Death Row. Carlos El Cicatriz Mendoza is awake. The scar that runs down his face, a gift from a rival cartel, throbs in the cold. He's been on death row for 4 years, convicted of killing 17 people. But that's not why he can't sleep. Tomorrow morning, the guards are coming. Not with food. Not with transfer papers. With the execution squad. In Mexico, they don't tell you the exact hour. They just come. And when Carlos hears the boots in the corridor, he'll have 30 seconds to make peace with God. But here's the thing. Carlos doesn't believe in God anymore. Not after what he's seen. Not after what he's done. This is the final 24 hours of a man who terrorized an entire region. A man whose face became a symbol of cartel violence. And what happens in these next 24 hours will show you what death row really looks like in the most brutal prison in Latin America. Before we step inside Altiplano, if you're into real prison stories that mainstream media won't show you, you need to subscribe right now. I cover the darkest criminal cases from around the world, and this one's going to be intense. Hit that like button because 90% of you aren't subscribed yet. Now let's go back to where it all started. The moment Carlos became El Cicatriz, the scar. Culiacan, Sinaloa. 2008, Carlos Mendoza is 24 years old, working construction for 50 pesos a day. He's got a wife, a baby daughter, and dreams of something better. But in Sinaloa, there's only one way out of poverty: the cartel. The Sinaloa cartel controls everything: drugs, guns, politicians, police. They own the state. Carlos's cousin is a low-level dealer. He offers Carlos a job. Easy money. Just drive a truck from point A to point B. No questions asked. Carlos takes the job. 1 truck becomes 10. 10 becomes 100. Within a year, Carlos isn't driving trucks anymore. He's enforcing. When someone steals from the cartel, Carlos pays them a visit. When someone talks to the police, Carlos makes sure they never talk again. He's good at it. Too good. By 2010, he's one of the cartel's most trusted enforcers. But trust in the cartel world is measured in blood. And Carlos is about to learn that lesson the hard way. March 15, 2012. A rival cartel ambushes Carlos outside a nightclub in Mazatlan. 3 gunmen. Carlos takes 2 bullets, one in the shoulder, one in the ribs. But it's the knife that leaves the mark. One of the attackers slashes him across the face, dragging a blade from his left eye down to his jaw. The wound is deep, almost to the bone. Carlos blacks out in a pool of his own blood. He wakes up in a cartel safe house 3 days later. No hospital. No doctors. Just a veterinarian stitching his face with fishing line. The infection nearly kills him. But he survives. When he looks in the mirror for the first time, he doesn't recognize himself. The scar is massive, grotesque, impossible to hide. His wife leaves him. She says she can't look at him anymore. His daughter cries when she sees him. The cartel gives him a new nickname: El Cicatriz, the scar. Carlos embraces it. If he's going to be a monster on the outside, he'll be a monster on the inside too. Over the next 6 years, he becomes the most feared enforcer in Sinaloa. 17 confirmed kills. Dozens more suspected. His face becomes legendary in the underworld. If you see El Cicatriz, you're already dead. June 2018. The Mexican military, working with DEA agents, raids a cartel compound outside Culiacan. They're not looking for Carlos. They're looking for his boss, a high-ranking cartel lieutenant. But someone tipped them off that Carlos would be there. Someone inside the cartel. When the soldiers storm the compound, Carlos doesn't run. He fights. He takes down 2 soldiers before a flashbang grenade disorients him. They beat him unconscious with rifle butts. When he wakes up, he's in a military transport, handcuffed, face covered in blood. The trial is swift. The evidence is overwhelming. 17 murders. Conspiracy. Drug trafficking. Kidnapping. The prosecutor calls him a stain on Mexico's soul. The judge sentences him to death. Carlos shows no emotion. He knew this was always how it would end. He's transferred to Altiplano Prison, the highest security facility in Mexico. The same prison that held El Chapo before his escape. The same prison that now holds the worst of the worst. Carlos is placed in cell block 7, death row. The cell is 8 feet wide, 10 feet long. Concrete walls, painted institutional gray. A steel door with a small reinforced glass window. No bars. Just solid steel. Inside, a concrete slab bed with a thin foam mattress. A metal toilet and sink bolted to the wall. A small shelf. That's it. One overhead light, fluorescent, always on. No natural light. No windows. The temperature is controlled, 72 degrees year-round. Not for comfort, for control. Too hot and prisoners get agitated. Too cold and they get sick, costing the state money. Carlos enters this cell in 2018. He's 34 years old, heavily muscled from years of cartel work and prison yard fights. His arms are covered in tattoos, the Virgin of Guadalupe on his right shoulder, a skull with roses on his left, script down his forearms, reading Sinaloa and Familia. His neck has teardrops tattooed under his right eye, 7 of them, 1 for each year he expects to be on death row. The door slams shut. The lock clicks. Carlos sits on the concrete bed and runs his finger along the scar on his face. He's been preparing for this moment his entire life. 6 a.m. A buzzer sounds throughout death row. Wake-up call. Carlos is already awake. He hasn't slept more than 3 hours. He stands and begins his morning routine. 500 push-ups, broken into sets of 50. His muscles burn, but he doesn't stop. In prison, staying strong is survival. Even on death row. After push-ups, sit-ups. 500. Then squats. 300. By the time he's done, an hour has passed and sweat covers his body. He strips off his gray prison uniform and washes himself at the small sink. The water is cold. It doesn't matter. He's used to worse. He looks at himself in the small metal mirror bolted above the sink. The scar stares back at him. A permanent reminder of the man he became. He touches it, traces the raised tissue. Some days he hates it. Today he's grateful. It made him legendary. And legends don't die quietly. 7:30 a.m. A slot at the bottom of the cell door slides open. A tray appears. Breakfast. On the tray, 2 pieces of white bread. A scoop of refried beans. A hard-boiled egg. A cup of watered-down coffee. This is breakfast. It's also lunch and dinner, just rearranged. Carlos pulls the tray through and sits on his bed. He eats slowly, methodically. In the cartel, he used to eat at the best restaurants in Sinaloa. Lobster, steak, imported whiskey. Now he eats beans and stale bread. But he doesn't complain. Complaining is weakness. And weakness gets you killed, even on death row. He finishes the food in 10 minutes. Places the tray back at the door. It's pulled away. The slot closes. Silence again. 9 a.m. Over the loudspeaker, a crackling voice announces chapel services. Death row inmates are allowed to attend if they request it. Carlos hasn't been to chapel in 3 years. But today, something pulls at him. Maybe it's knowing his time is almost up. Maybe it's the memory of his mother, who used to drag him to church every Sunday as a boy. He presses the call button in his cell. A guard's voice comes through. ¿Qué quieres? What do you want? Chapel, Carlos says. 10 minutes later, his cell door opens. 2 guards stand outside, batons ready. Carlos steps out, hands behind his back. They cuff him. Ankles too. He's walked down the corridor in chains, shuffling, barely able to move. The chapel is a small room with plastic chairs and a wooden cross on the wall. 6 other inmates sit scattered. A priest stands at the front, old, weary, like he's seen this 1,000 times. Carlos sits in the back. The priest talks about forgiveness, redemption, God's mercy. Carlos listens, but the words bounce off him. He's killed 17 people, cut their throats, shot them in the head, buried them in the desert. There's no redemption for him. When the service ends, Carlos is escorted back to his cell. The guards uncuff him. The door closes. He sits on his bed and stares at the wall. Maybe there is no God. Or maybe God stopped looking at him a long time ago. 11 a.m. The mail slot opens. A single envelope drops to the floor. Carlos picks it up. The handwriting is unfamiliar, but the return address makes his chest tighten. His daughter. She's 16 now. He hasn't seen her since she was 8. His hands shake as he opens the letter. Inside a single page. Her handwriting is neat, careful. Papa, I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if you even remember me. But I needed to write. I'm getting married next year. My fiancé is a good man. He works in his father's shop. He treats me well. I wanted you to know. I don't hate you. I used to. But Mama told me that hate only destroys the person holding it. So I forgive you. Not for you. For me. I hope you find peace. Adios, Papa. Sofia. Carlos reads the letter 3 times. Then he folds it carefully and places it on the shelf next to his bed. His eyes burn, but he doesn't cry. He hasn't cried since the day they gave him the scar. But this letter breaks something inside him. His daughter is getting married, and he won't be there. 12:30 p.m. The food slot opens again. Another tray. Beans. Bread. Rice. The same as breakfast. Carlos eats without tasting. His mind is on the letter. On Sofia. He wonders what she looks like now. If she has his eyes. His mother's smile. He wonders if she's happy. If her fiancé knows who her father is. El Cicatriz. The monster from the news. Would he still marry her if he knew? Carlos hopes she never tells him. She deserves a life free from his shadow. He finishes the food. Returns the tray. Lies on his bed. The ceiling has a water stain in the shape of Mexico. He's stared at it for 4 years. Traced the outline with his eyes 1,000 times. Sinaloa is near the top left. That's where he's from. That's where he became a killer. That's where he stopped being human. Real quick, if you're still watching, hit that subscribe button. This story gets even darker, and I post cases like this every week. Drop a comment. Do you think Carlos deserves death, or is there still humanity left in him? Now, back to his final hours. 2 p.m. Carlos's cell door opens. Yard time. Every death row inmate gets 1 hour of outdoor recreation per day. Carlos is led in chains through a series of locked doors and corridors. Finally, he steps outside. The yard is a concrete box, 20 feet by 20 feet, surrounded by 30-foot walls. Above, a chain-link ceiling. The sun is visible, but filtered. He can't feel its full warmth. There are 3 other inmates in the yard. Carlos doesn't know their names. On death row, you don't make friends. One of them, a thin man with gang tattoos covering his face, nods at Carlos. Carlos nods back. They don't speak. For the next hour, Carlos walks in circles, around and around the perimeter, counting his steps. 100, 200, 500. It's the only exercise beyond his cell routine. His muscles ache. His body is strong, but his mind is tired. So tired. At 3 p.m., the guards call him back. He's escorted to his cell. The door closes. Another hour of freedom gone. 4 p.m. A knock on the cell door. A voice through the speaker. Dr. Ruiz is here. Carlos sits up. Dr. Ruiz is the prison psychologist. She visits death row inmates once a month to assess their mental state. Carlos has been seeing her for 4 years. She's the only person who talks to him like he's human. The door opens. Dr. Ruiz enters, a guard standing just outside. She's in her 40s, professional, kind eyes. She sits in the plastic chair they bring in for these sessions. How are you feeling today, Carlos? She asks. Carlos shrugs. The same. She writes something in her notebook. I heard you went to chapel this morning. That's new. My daughter wrote me a letter. Carlos says quietly. Dr. Ruiz looks up. That's significant. How did it make you feel? Carlos is silent for a long moment. Like I wasted my life. Dr. Ruiz nods slowly. Regret is a heavy burden. I killed people, Carlos says, his voice flat. 17 people. Maybe more. I don't even remember all their faces. How do you come back from that? You don't, Dr. Ruiz says honestly. But you can make peace with it. You can choose how you face what's coming. Carlos looks at her. What if I don't deserve peace? Everyone deserves peace, Carlos. Even you. 5:30 p.m. Dinner arrives. Beans. Bread. Weak soup. Carlos eats in silence. The fluorescent light flickers above him. For a moment, he's plunged into darkness. His heart races. Darkness in prison is dangerous. But the light flickers back on. Carlos exhales. He finishes his food. Returns the tray. The sun is setting outside, though he can't see it. In his cell, there's no difference between day and night. Just the same cold light. The same gray walls. The same waiting. 7 p.m. Carlos lies on his bunk, staring at the ceiling. His mind drifts back. 2009, his first kill. The cartel boss told him to handle a problem. A man who owed money. Carlos drove to the man's house in the middle of the night. Knocked on the door. When the man opened it, Carlos shot him in the chest. No hesitation. No remorse. The man collapsed. His wife screamed. Carlos left. On the drive back, his hands shook on the steering wheel. Not from fear. From adrenaline. He felt powerful. Alive. That feeling became an addiction. Each kill easier than the last. Until he stopped feeling anything at all. Now, lying in his cell, Carlos wonders when he stopped being human. Was it the first kill? The 5th? The 10th? Or was it the day they gave him the scar, and he decided to become the monster everyone already saw? 9 p.m. In most prisons, lights go out. But on death row in Altiplano, the lights never turn off. It's a form of control. Sleep deprivation. Psychological torture. Carlos has adapted. He closes his eyes and forces his mind to shut down. But tonight, sleep won't come. His thoughts race. Tomorrow. The guards might come tomorrow. Or the next day. Or never. The uncertainty is the worst part. He'd rather know the exact hour than live in this limbo. Some death row inmates go insane from the waiting. They bang their heads against the walls. Scream for hours. Beg the guards to just do it already. Carlos refuses. He'll die on his feet, not broken on the floor. Before I show you what happens next, 90% of you still aren't subscribed. If you want more intense true crime from the world's most dangerous prisons, hit that button now. You won't believe what Carlos does in the next few hours. Let's keep going. 11 p.m. Carlos touches the Virgin of Guadalupe tattoo on his shoulder. He got it when he was 17, before the cartel, before the killing. His mother was religious. She believed the Virgin protected her family. Carlos believed it too, once. After his first kill, he added more tattoos. Skulls, roses, names of the dead, each one a mark of who he'd become. The teardrops under his eye were added in prison. 7 teardrops. 7 years he expected to be here. He's been here for 6. 1 more year. Or 1 more day. He doesn't know. 1 a.m. Carlos finally drifts into a restless sleep. The nightmare comes immediately. He's in the desert. The sun is blinding. In front of him, 17 people kneel in a line. All of them he killed. They turn to look at him. Their faces are rotting. Maggots crawl from their eyes. They don't speak. They just stare. Carlos tries to run, but his legs won't move. The ground beneath him turns to blood. He's sinking, drowning in it. He wakes with a gasp, drenched in sweat. His heart pounds. The fluorescent light buzzes above him. He's still in his cell. Still alive. Still waiting. 3 a.m. Carlos sits on the edge of his bed, head in his hands. He's exhausted, but can't sleep. The weight of everything crashes down on him. His daughter's letter. The faces of the dead. The scar. The wasted life. For the first time in years, Carlos feels something close to regret. Not for getting caught, but for the choices that led him here. He thinks about the man he could have been. A husband. A father. A construction worker with calloused hands and an honest living. Instead, he became a killer. A legend. A monster. And for what? Money? Respect? Fear? All of it is gone now. All that's left is a scarred face and a cell that measures 8 by 10. 5 a.m. The death row wing is silent. This is the hour. When the execution squads come, they come now. Carlos sits on his bed, back straight, hands folded, waiting. He listens for footsteps, for the sound of the door at the end of the corridor opening. Minutes pass. Nothing. Maybe not today. Maybe tomorrow. Or maybe never. The waiting continues. 6:30 a.m. The morning buzzer sounds. Wake-up call. Carlos made it through another night. He stands and begins his push-ups. 500. Like every morning, his body moves on autopilot. The routine keeps him sane. Outside his cell, the prison wakes up. Guards change shifts. Food carts rattle down corridors. Another day on death row begins. Carlos finishes his workout and washes at the sink. He looks at his reflection. The scar. The tattoos. The face of El Cicatriz. He's still here. Still breathing. Still waiting. 8 a.m. Carlos sits at the small shelf that serves as a desk. He's been given paper and a pencil. He begins to write. Sophia, I got your letter. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm grateful for it. You're getting married. I wish I could be there. I wish I could walk you down the aisle like a real father. But I'm not a real father. I'm a killer. A monster. The man in the news. I want you to know that I loved you. I still do. Even though I don't deserve to. Be happy, Mija. Don't let my shadow follow you. You're not my daughter. You're your mother's daughter. And that's a blessing. Adios. Papa Carlos folds the letter. He won't send it. Sophia doesn't need to hear from him again. She needs to forget he exists. He places the letter on the shelf next to hers. 2 letters. One from hope. One from regret. Carlos El Cicatriz Mendoza has been on death row for 6 years. He could be executed tomorrow. Or he could wait another decade. In Mexico, death sentences are rarely carried out. But the torture of waiting is the real punishment. This is what 24 hours looks like for a man who terrorized a nation, now locked in an 8 by 10 cell, waiting for boots in the corridor. If you want more stories from the world's deadliest prisons, check out my video on the most brutal prison riots in history. It's even more intense. Link on screen. Subscribe, because I cover cases like this every single week. And comment below, does Carlos deserve death, or has he already paid enough? Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.